Whoa, we just witnessed two massive quirk evolutions within a single chapter. The so-called Quirk Doomsday is here. And that's on top of the fact that one of the main characters in the story is actively dying right now. Like, what is going on, Horikoshi? This is just insane, so let's get into it. You guys know how this works. If you enjoy my MHA videos and you want to see more in the future, leave a quick like and comment right now to help me out with that YouTube algorithm. And I know that over 50% of you guys who are watching this video right now are not subscribed. Do me a big favor and subscribe right now and hit that notification bell to turn on all notifications. We are trying to hit 2 million subscribers here on the channel, and every subscription matters. If you still haven't seen my favorite video that I've made here on the channel about how Deku could have become a villain in MHA, check it out, link in the description and in the pinned comment. Finally, this video will contain MHA manga spoilers, so please proceed with caution. You have been warned. After an emotional and violent showdown between Ochako and Toga, Toga managed to get up close to Ochako and stab her in the abdomen. We saw this in the previous chapter, and this was clearly a serious injury, a potentially fatal injury, and the entire fandom suddenly began speculating about whether Ochako could really die in this arc. Personally, even though Ochako's potential death would be an absolutely massive twist that would shake the entire world of MHA to its core, and that would likely turn Deku into a completely different and darker character, I just don't think that Horikoshi will go through with killing her. But let's just see what happens. To his credit, Horikoshi has had the courage to kill off some decently important characters in the past, but I just don't think that Ochako would be killed off. She seems too popular and too important. At the very end of the previous chapter, we saw a flashback in which Twice asked Toga why she still hadn't picked out a villain name and why she's just using her real name instead. The latest chapter picks up during that same flashback, and we see that basically the entire League of Villains was part of the villain name discussion that took place sometime in the past. Mr. Compressed points out that Toga and Shigaraki are the only ones who haven't chosen a special villain name. And while this is technically true, Shigaraki is still using a fake name. His real name is of course Tenko Shimura, but he goes by Tomura Shigaraki. That said, it is true that he doesn't have a cool sounding villain name like Decay Daddy, so point taken. The villains suggest some pretty cringe villain names for Toga, but Toga and Dabi both shut them down as being lame. Shigaraki then talks about the past, in which there was no clear distinction between heroes and villains. Back when quirks first appeared in the world, it was chaos, and you couldn't tell who was trying to help you and who was trying to hurt you. It was a complete mess, so you didn't yet have heroes and villains in the conventional sense. Then eventually, as heroes and villains emerged in a more clear-cut way, and both heroes and villains began adopting code names. Still, Shigaraki says that he doesn't need such things, and Toga agrees. She joined the League of Villains in order to finally be herself. She joined so that she could finally live her life as Himiko Toga after all the hardship she faced because of who she was. And so adopting a different villain name now doesn't make sense for her. Back on the battlefield in the present time, Toga screams at Ochako not to pity her. At the same time as she is saying this, Toga pulls out that knife out of Ochako's body, and there is definitely a lot of blood pouring out of the wound. This was not just like a scratch or a grazing injury, this was a serious injury, and we have to keep this in mind going forward. Ochako replies that she is not trying to pity Toga, but Toga doesn't care what pretty words Ochako decides to use. Ochako just wants to talk Toga out of killing the heroes, and as soon as she is no longer a threat, Toga will be locked up and maybe even executed. In fact, if she can't take her in alive, Ochako might just kill Toga right here and now, just like Hawks did to Twice. Toga says that win or lose, this is a battle for survival, and it's do or die. Toga's quirk then seems to evolve even further, or rather she seems to evolve the way that she is using Twice's quirk, because she upgrades her Sad Man's Parade to Sad Man's Parade 2.0. In other words, Toga unlocks Sad Man's Legion, and suddenly it's not just Twice clones that are swarming the battlefield. Swarms of Tsuyus, Ochakos, Pixie Bobs, and other hero clones join the Twice clones to create a true weapon of mass destruction. The reporter inside the helicopter who is looking down on the battlefield calls this nothing less than the Quirk Doomsday Theory coming to reality. This grotesque display of overwhelming power is the face of Quirk Singularity. The clones seem to be moving in these like massive clumps or piles that almost look like the tendrils of a sea monster or something, and Toga commands the clones to crush Ochako. But Ochako is able to stand her ground, at least for now, by using the martial arts techniques she learned from Gunhead to make all the clones float. She didn't actually hurt the clones, but she has restricted their movements by forcing them to float in zero gravity. Now, if you're wondering how